So, namaste. Today, I wanted to focus on speaking about yoga in modern life or modern world yoga. As you're going in through this dimension of fluctuations of our life, like during this situation we all are in, it becomes important to actually see how yoga has provided us with the positivity to get going. And that is why I thought that I should speak about the modern yoga and to evaluate in my own perspective on how I see and how we can, what are the boons and what are the things which we can adapt, and how we can transform if there is anything at all coming in from our past of what we had been learning in the history of yoga and how it had been continued in this modern life. When I first came to this yoga field, when I first came into yoga field, just like we all are, it was more of the physical nature of yoga which motivated me to continue going. And when I started, I was around 7 years old. I didn't really have much of understanding or knowledge of what yoga is supposed to be, and I thought that it's a form of sport. It's a form of physical exercise. It is a form of practice which helps us to keep healthy. Now, this was also the definition which was given to us by our parents. So my father, if you have seen my previous videos in Yoga Talk, I mentioned there, but since we are going back into the history, again go back and speak a bit. My father took me into the yoga class, the very first one. I forgot exactly which day it was, but it should be around last week of August, if I remember, 1992. And I was looking at the students practicing inside, and it was an advanced class. Well, we didn't have much levels. Okay, we had just like beginners, and then we have advanced, so just 2 levels. So beginners used to have classes early, from like 6:30 until 8:30, and then from 8:30 we had the senior classes. So I was there at that time, not because I was going straight into advanced class, but more because it was a time we thought that we have to be there. And I was watching some of the seniors doing incredible formations with their body. I would say formation because I don't know what it is called back then. Getting the leg overhead and bringing it down all the way till the center of the back, going in straight spine and doing a namaste in standing. And I was like, wow, that is awesome. That is so awesome. And some of the things which we see in our life that creates a spark deep inside of us where you can't really forget. So I still have that vision inside my mind that, wow, it's supposed to be like this, and it's so cool. So this was my first impression. My father brought me into the yoga class thinking that I have constant flu, cough and cold problem. I used to have tonsillitis, so my tonsils used to swell out a lot back then. So that was the purpose. And then when I experienced my first couple of classes, it wasn't a great experience physically speaking because I didn't know what is pain and why I should be taking pain in, but I was being told that just do it, it's good for you. And for kids, they won't think too much. Like maybe kids in this modern life, they might ask questions, but back then we didn't really. So okay, fine, this is good for us, we go in. And evolving from that age, coming into this age, and one big leap for me was as I came in back from a small town into Hong Kong, a big city like Hong Kong, big in the sense not area wise, but so much happens in Hong Kong, right? It's a world city. Um, I had been looking at my journey from back where I started and how the definition of yoga have changed over time within me with my practice level. So you all know that in India, like whenever you look into any profiles of yoga instructors who are Indians, if you go to Pure or any other websites, just look down and you would see that there are hundreds and hundreds of awards, of awards, yoga, asana, champion, and this and that. So, what it is actually about? Like, there has been lots of students who have asked me that, what is this competition of yoga all about? And isn't that yoga is supposed to be a sacred practice where we should be learning more about ourselves and let go of the ego? But when we are talking about competition, we are following exactly the reverse path. Um, it doesn't have a very concrete answer from my side, and I'll be honest on why. I totally agree that when you're practicing yoga, it should be about letting go. It should be about letting go. But if you see the modern yoga platform, it is 90%, 90% or even more about improving your physical practice, about improving your asana practice. So when you're seeing yourself as a part of this community and you want to improve your asana practice, you would probably also somewhere get stuck with that ego that I want to get better. I want to get myself into a handstand or into a certain pose. And if you relate the same thing back into the asana competition, they are kind of similar thing. It is just like one is going on very openly, another one is going on within ourselves. One which we see is, okay, the practice is more sacred, but still I want to improve my asana practice. And one is offering ourselves a platform of coming in, gathering with the yoga community together and going on the stage, demonstrating the skills and abilities of doing crazy stuffs and winning awards and building motivation. Now, to me, if I see back then, I was doing yoga, but only probably 15 to 20% of what I'm doing right now, and I'll come why. And maybe in the same way you can relate your own personal practice with my journey. Because back then, we thought that that's yoga. That's yoga basically. Do the practice, go ahead, get your postures good, get them sharp, feel strong physically, feel flexible physically, and you're doing yoga right way. And when I look back at that point, there was never any time where I felt that I was doing it the wrong way. I was extremely motivated by that platform. By that platform, I was extremely motivated because it gave me a reason of continuing to develop myself. As a student, I didn't really had any other sports I was in. So yoga asana was kind of sports which I was in. Going into different award functions, doing demonstration, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I learned a lot. Of how I should present myself in front of people. I learned a lot about my body, how I should take in or how I should carry it forward, mainly because of the injuries which I had. It gave me a lots of understanding and knowledge of what to do, what not. And then coming back in here, as I moved into this platform of teaching, I began to feel and I began to study more about what yoga is about. One thing when I go back and see back in those days when I used to be in the competition field, that there was never anybody who used to tell us that It is fine to lose something. It is fine that you do not get an award on stage, because we kids were so driven that I need to win. I need to win. We all, the whole group, they were like, they will fight for the first place. And when we didn't get it, at least to me, I would say, I cannot stand for others' opinion, but at least for my own self, I would feel very depleted. I would feel very low. And now when I see my practice getting evolution, and there are certain things which happens in my life which pushes me down somewhere, I use the tools of my practice to bring me back up, to bring me back up to that state of knowing that what I have done before in my life and now what I am doing, there is a big gap, it's a big bridge in between how I used to take yoga from the competition life and now what I have taken it to. From completely physical to something which moves you through the physical into the spiritual. My way of adapting or getting into the postures or practices have changed. My way of listening to myself when to stop, because I never used to stop. I used to just keep going. That has changed. My way of offering the practice to student have changed too. If you have been in my classes back then, which was 2004, when I came in Hong Kong and started teaching, I just used to blindly follow what I saw. Maybe one or two of you, who those are watching here, knows what I'm saying. And I was just simply offering flow, just do the practice, sweat out and go. That is why I call that as a modern yoga. And if you have been to my classes now, I know that majority of us still comes into the classes for working on their physical body, which is not incorrect, because through the body we connect into the mind. It is all stepping stone. At least we respect our body and treat it as a temple which we need to clean every day, which is a great thing. So starting up with the body is a great thing. But if you had been doing my classes, I try my best to put in that spiritual essence, that awareness of the mind to stay connected with the body. Mind and body are not two separate entities in a way, but also separate in a way. You can only work on the physical. You can run. You can just run, watch a serial while you're on the treadmill, and you're completely working on the physical. Now, what is the mind working is watching that soap or the serial or those episodes. There is no spiritual upliftment in there. The same thing, if you're aware of your breath even when you're running, you're aware of the switch of your emotion, that becomes spiritual. So there is a difference. And to bring that, build that gap is what we all need to acknowledge in our existing practice. Not just moving, but moving with mindfulness. Moving for a reason and with a reason. Checking in with ourselves, why am I doing this? I'm great in doing handstands. All right, fine. If that is making us happy to be great in handstand, it is a good source of joy. Happiness is the ultimate goal, at least to me. If everything is good around me, I'm happy. So if that is a small source of happiness for you, it is great. But then that small source of happiness would always be temporary. At least to me, it has always been temporary. I get to learn a new posture I really like and I love it a lot. And then after that, a couple of months later, it becomes a part of me and it doesn't excite me anymore that, oh, I was able to do 6 months before this particular pose. And then I keep on hunting towards something different and new. And hence, when you're working towards that kind of joy, it is fine, knowing that it is keeping ourselves driven towards a platform, but it is not a long-term sustainable goal. But what can make us happy is every time we are on the mat, we are with, within ourselves, to realize, to connect with the inner spirit, that sense of joy is different. That sense of joy would stay with us for long. And of course, if we stop doing our sadhana, if we stop doing our practice, that sense also starts perishing, it starts fading away. There is no way something is going to stay with us for the rest of our life. It always goes on and off. So in order to keep building that back in, we have to keep doing it again and again, repeatedly. You might be able to do a 2 minutes handstand now. Check it out, leave it for a month. It will come down to 1 minute or maybe even less. Leave it for 6 months. You would completely lose the feeling of it. So everything about what we do is about realizing why we are doing it. So going back, when you're coming in for my classes, at least my presentation or my way of putting things out to the student have changed. I still teach asanas, and I will teach asanas, because if I don't teach asanas, people would not come. It's about sustainability, right? I mean, I personally like asana, so I would definitely teach that. But at the same time, I try my best. If you're coming into my 2 hours classes, I would keep 15 to 20 minutes as pranayama and meditation. With every asanas we do, I try my best to offer all the students that link of staying connected in and not just sweating around, not just moving and trying to attain some poses. And that is how my offering, or me being as a teacher, has evolved from 2004 to 2020 now. A couple of questions might be in your mind now. So I haven't spoken much about the yoga asana competitions, and I haven't said my opinion about it. I partly did, and if you ask me directly, are yoga competitions good or not? There is always pros and cons of everything. To me, yoga competition was good in a way that it helped me to learn about my body. It helped me to learn about my ego, at least later part. It helped me to connect in with the society in a different vibe. It exposed my strengths and weaknesses to me. What are the things, the drawback I felt was I was very driven, where I should have been able to keep my balance. I suffered multiple number of injuries. I also had a sense of jealousy back then, because obviously when you're competing and somebody else is better than you, being a kid, you're not told that, hey, you have to just take it openly, because that's a step of learning. So there was lots of jealousy and selfishness. But I still see those things as positive, because they also have changed me in a way that I've seen myself more. If it's right or wrong, there is nothing as right or wrong. If you're doing asana championships, or if you're working towards asana championships, learn from that process of what you are undergoing through. Love the process of what you're doing, and remember that nobody has the measurement, or there is no certain parameters of yoga competitions. It is asana competition where you are working with, there is a difference, right? Asana versus yoga. When you're talking about yoga, you're talking about body, mind, and spirit. How can I measure, or what can be my setup that who is spiritually more evolved? So first of all, to me, calling it as a yoga championship doesn't make sense. If you're doing asana championship also, try to treat the kids or the students in such a way that they have got some spiritual upliftment. Do not just ask them to go onto the stage and do a particular posture, giving marks and that. Yeah, that's fine, because they enjoy it, they get motivated. But see that they are not going in towards the darker side, or that is at least taking them towards some positive line. If these things are being done, if you ask me how to do it, well, there are different ways, and I don't want to go back into them because it's going to take another half an hour. But, well, if you are somebody who is very keen to conduct competitions, or you are participating, see what it is offering you apart from, at the end of the day, that prize money or winning up the medal. Because as I said, that is always a temporary state of joy. So, yep, that's my opinion about competitions. Nothing right or nothing wrong. It has helped me. It has also taken me to the delusion side, and I now see and I try to take it in the positive. Um, you know, when we started yoga, I'll just go back a little bit about past yoga history, and so it makes more sense about how I relating to the modern yoga. It was around 3000 BC. That means more than 5000 years from now. That in Indus Valley civilization, there were some excavations, there were some seals were engraved, and those seals showed the forms of yogis in the postures. So from there, we have this understanding that probably yoga was existing back then in 5000 years before. Then came the Vedic period where they mentioned about yoga as well. Vedas were scriptures for Hinduism, their do's and don'ts, birth, marriage, life, and so on. Four different Vedas, so not going into those details. Then came the Upanishads, which talk about the Atman, the spirit, and the Brahman, the universal force, and how to connect them together through the practice of yoga and how to attain the ultimate goal, that is moksha. Then after that, during Jesus Christ's time, it came the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali around similar time, where Patanjali helped us to put everything down in a systematic format, where we were able to follow every steps and we were able to try incorporating those practices in our daily life. And if you see those 196 sutras, you would see just a few are based on the physical practice, just a few. All others are about your mind. All others are about when you're practicing in a right way, how does that changes you as a person? What kind of knowledge or power you build up? How to harness that power towards a spiritual growth? This is all about the aspect of Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Then in modern yoga, like it was quite a big gap in between, say 1800 and 1800 to 1900. So 1950s, even before 1800, the practice of yoga was more like very handful of yogis would do it, and they were the sages actually, because they know that they need their mind to be still. They were the one to they were thriving to really feel that what is the balance and what is the ultimate truth. So they are the ones, those who went to the Himalayas and continued with their meditation and their sadhana practice. Then around 1960s, it started to get more modernized, in the sense that practices were taken in more physical level, with that balance between physical and spiritual sense that was still maintained back then. So it was like Swami Shivananda, then Mahesh Yogi, then Swami Vivekananda. They all used to preach yoga in India and outside India. And there was still that fine line of balance between how much you should work with the spiritual aspect and through meditation, and how much should be the asanas to keep the body ready for sitting in meditation for long. So in case you don't know, we used to do asanas back then in our previous life, because the body would start feeling discomfort or uncomfortable when it's sitting still for a long time. And that is why asanas were a tool to keep the body steady, to be able to stay still for a prolonged period of time. And later on, in the West, there were different modified forms of practices which started to begin. Hot yoga was one huge hit. It was a great deal for people to get into the hot yoga classes, because people in the West were struggling to keep themselves fit, and hot yoga was a super successful tool in order to get into that level where people started to really love the physical side of yoga. And that's where probably some balance went out missing, and I feel like if we had still held on to that spiritual aspect still at that point, it wouldn't have been tipped too much. But all for a good reason, because we are what we are right now, and we have got to embrace our reality. Then Then come the Ashtanga Vinyasa, Ashtanga Mysore, similar time, Iyengar Yoga, and now we are where we are. So if you see, yoga started, it was like 5,000 years before, and Ashtanga Vinyasa Mysore, Iyengar Yoga, these are all like 40 years old yoga practice. Hot yoga, these are all like 30, 40 years old practice. So they are still very recent practices. They're very, very new practices where students are being offered that blend in between their physicality, their energy, their chi, the prana, to work on with some effort, uh, as well as to strive, letting their mind stay still while the practice is on. And so right now, coming back to where we started, if you see back then where it's all spirituality and now it's mainly 90% physicality, if I see myself as a person who is practicing yoga just for the sake of staying fit, or what I started initially with, staying fit, doing my postures good, and that's what if I am offering to students, it would not really be helpful for me at this situation where everything is so uncertain. We all are inside this. We all know that the whole world is inside this. We all know how things are getting crazy, how people are getting violent, how there are theft and robberies because of lack of employment. We have no certainties about what's going to happen next, how many more days, months, years we have got to go through this. And if you can think about one thing which helps the mind to still remain positive, is your spirituality. It's not your practice, it's actually the spirit within you, how strong it is. And that spirituality does not really build up in one day. It has to be fine-tuned years and years, years and years. And if you have been doing it, or even if you have just started doing it, you would still manifest something positive out of it. I was talking to one of my students the other day, and the student said that I'm so frustrated for this second part of the lockdown, and I feel very lonely. I feel there are so many uncertainties in my life, and I think I should just let go of everything what's around me, and I should just find something which makes me feel happy right now. And my answer was, you definitely can do that, but see that happiness is not momentary, and if you're letting go of certain thing, that might be something which is permanent. So think about this as a difficult phase of your life which you want to take in being strong. This is the time where we need to remain mentally and spiritually strong. Physically, well, you all are doing your Zoom classes and IG classes, so I'm pretty sure you are. But going in for that mental and spiritual upliftment is something which would sustain everything in a proper way. I was looking at some of the statistics, and it said that the suicidal rate has increased, the divorce rate has increased in the last couple of months. The theft rate, the robbery rate has increased, where the employment has gone down. The stock market is going down. So everything is in a mess. Everything is going in somewhere where nobody wants, where nobody wants. But we all are inside this. So potentially, how can we stay positive? Through our practice, but it is how we do the practice. When I'm on the mat, my intention of the practice is, I want to be here right now. I want to forget about everything else. I want to do my sadhana. I want to do my breath work. I want to stay right now within myself. And that inner zeal, that spirit, that enthusiasm, that energy helps me to feel and think a lot clearer as I finish up the practice. When I do not practice, certain days if I don't, that clarity starts getting fade. It fades out. And then I start to feel impulsive again. The mind begins to fluctuate. Oh my God, I have got to pay my bills next month. I have no earning. I'm not a freelance teacher that I can go out to the park and teach students. I just have to rely on my company and my Zoom classes, which is like once in every 2 days. And of course, that's by my choice too. So when I start to feel all these fluctuations, I've got to get back to my mats, take a couple of breaths, and it gives me that really the deep sense of freedom of reconnecting back to myself. So see how you're practicing and what your practice is actually offering you to carry forward. As I just discussed about the past, the history of yoga, the reason it's being done, now the same reason needs to come back in here again. We have changed the natural flow of lots of things in this world. We have changed the natural flow of lots of things in this world. And now nature is trying to reset that back. Yoga is also one part of it. So you don't have to drastically overnight change lots of stuff, but know that the inner change within you is going to bring that absoluteness of the practice within you to bringing in or sending more love and positivity.